Good morning, coaches. My name is Barclay Radebaugh with Nations of Coaches. Thank you for being with us this morning. We're so glad that you're a part of our growth series. Today is session 4 of our Nations of Coaches growth series. And this morning we're joined by Jack Easterby. Good morning, Jack.
Good morning, brother.
Man, I am so excited that you're going to be a part of our growth series this morning. Coaches across the country, across the world, you get your pens out, get your paper out. You're in for a treat. Jack is amazing. What he's done in his career has prepared him in extraordinary ways. And Jack, we're really excited. Before we get started, I've always known you, Jack, as a golf guy and a basketball guy. I know you played both in college. Tremendous athlete. When our team was looking for a picture of you for this virtual clinic, we saw you with the Patriots throwing a football. So we want to know, I'm going to give you A, B, C, or D. You ready?
Well, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready.
All right, let's go.
Yeah.
Coach Belichick taught you how to throw that football.
Okay.
B, Tom Brady taught you how to throw that football. C, it was AI generated. Or D, you're just one of those dudes. You're just one of those dudes that can just do it all.
Well, the greatest lesson of anything now is you got to be careful what you find on the internet, right? So I would say it's probably somewhere between all of it. I'm hoping if it looked like I was complete in the past that it was AI generated, because I threw a lot of balls to nobody.
Man, you dodged that question. You dodged that question. That's funny. That's funny. All right, let's get going. Jack, you're in the middle of an amazing career. Just amazing. Amazing. Jacksonville Jaguars, University of South Carolina, Kansas City Chiefs, New England Patriots, Houston Texans, lots of hats, lots of responsibilities in different places, excellence everywhere, 3 Super Bowl trophies, lots of highs and lows like all of us, lots of responsibilities, lots of experience. When you look back on all that you've accomplished and all that you're going to accomplish, who has had the most influence professionally on your career?
Well, I was blessed to grow up in a great family. My mom and dad loved me well. I have one sister, grew up in Columbia, South Carolina. And when I was probably in 5th grade, Barclay, my dad started a sports ministry at the church we were at. And this was before like the upward basketball and before the church basketball was really a big deal. And so he started a ministry for the city of Columbia where basically Saturdays and Wednesdays, youth basketball could participate down at First Pres or at different local gyms in Columbia. And so I was really blessed to have an awesome father, to have a dad who loved me and saw really the intersection between sports and Christ and how important it was to use sports as a vehicle to love others well, to be able to give them a platform to do something they love, obviously, and then insert the most important message of all time, which is the message of Jesus. And so I watched that growing up. I was at clinics, I was at camps, and then when I was in high school, my dad reached out to the University of South Carolina where you were working, and I was really blessed that he invited you to come to a few of his basketball camps he was teaching. And that gave me a role model. It gave me somebody at that time who was coaching in the SEC and who was leading and doing multiple roles for a program that I had looked up, to growing up in the shadow of the University of South Carolina, watching you guys have success. I now had an example of somebody who was loving their family and honoring the Lord in that profession. And so my dad really got me started, obviously, and then watching you be successful and then transition into head coaching. And then Dave Odom in 2005, when I graduated from Newberry, Dave Odom had recruited me out of high school as a walk-on, and I had a talent problem. I had a talent deficiency. So I ended up going to Newberry College, which was such a blessing, met my wife there. But Dave Odom reached to me and built a role for me, kind of a character coaching role. And it was really cool because he saw past, I think, a little bit of the deficiencies of some of the life skills and the things that were going on that he needed for his players to have. And he saw past that and said, hey, let's fix this. Let's figure out a way to have somebody who's at study hall and chapel and obviously at practice every day, and run my summer camps with 5-star and then there at South Carolina. So Dave poured into me. And then I went to seminary. And when I went to seminary, there was a guy named Mark Ross. Mark Ross actually played basketball at the University of Pittsburgh and was a seminary professor of Old and New Testament at Erskine Theological Seminary. And so I had my dad with this awesome pedigree of sports and Jesus, and then, you looking up to what you had been as a competitive leader, but also as a father, husband, friend, and then Dave Odom and Mark Ross. And then from a strategic element, I was really blessed to work for the greatest coach, I believe, of all time, Bill Belichick. And so when I got to Bill and I, unlike those others, didn't have faith necessarily as the impetus for our relationship, but we did have an overlap of wanting what's best for the team and wanting to find ways to work together. And Bill was a man of hard truth, meaning that he was not afraid to have tough discussions. And so I felt like those people really rooted me in my faith. And then Bill obviously really rooted me in my strategy and my leadership, matrix, and how I can learn to lead better. And obviously I'm still learning, just like everybody on this call. But if I had to say kind of the top dogs in my life, it'd be my dad to you, and then to Dave, to Mark Ross, and then to Coach Belichick.
Oh, wow. I've known you a long time, and I've always known your relentless pursuit of excellence. Mm. So what drives you, Jack? What drives you? Why? What drives you?
Yeah, I think, and this is going to be a very simple phrase, but it's very complex, is I think what drives me is I really believe God is watching. Mm. I think when you when you go out in the backyard and you don't think your coach is watching or your dad is watching and you're learning sports, you might throw a couple of balls off the wall that aren't the best form, or you might, shoot a couple flippant layups when you're growing up, right? But when your coach is watching, you're pounding that dribble, you're taking a big step, and you're going to make sure you get it right off the middle of the square. And so to me, in my faith growing up, I've always been team oriented, whether it was with my church or with my teams, different places. And so when I'm by myself, when I'm traveling, when I'm doing things, I've just doubled down on that thought that I just really believe God is watching. And I believe that once you understand what he did for you on Calvary, that he took your place, it should have been you dying on the cross, and we're all messy, right? We're all messy people. So once you understand how much he got between you and your mess, and then you understand he's watching, right? You become motivated to want to honor him and to write him a thank you note back, right? For what he did for you on the cross. And so for me, I feel like my life is a thank you note back to Jesus and for what he's done for me. And so when everybody says, hey, what's your why? What's your why? Obviously God is the big why. But when you really get down to it, whether it's taxes or even this leadership forum today, I think the way you really do your best is to really believe in your heart that God is watching.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about professional sports, college sports. I've noticed how when you're preparing for the draft, you're preparing for a draft where any of the teams that you've been with, the amazing amount of intel that professional teams do. Mm-hmm. Now, college athletics is moving in that direction. So if you were giving us advice as college coaches on how to do better intel, on who to recruit, intel for who you're going to draft, intel for who we're going to recruit, how can we improve in that area?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, Barclay, I think the thing I learned most from Bill, okay, is you have to, and specifically to this question, you have to really work from the job description back to the person and not work from the person to the job description. Okay. So by that, I mean, when you're talking about January football, okay, and you can't jump off sides and you have to complete a hard third down and you have to play in the cold weather and you can't turn the ball over and you have to obviously be able to have multiple alerts in the game. And obviously you got to play when you're hurt, all those things. You know what the job description is, right? Whether it's a nickel corner or whether it's a wide receiver or a punt returner or a field goal kicker, you can lean into, okay, this is what this is. And in basketball, I'd say the same thing, right? You need a guy to make a free throw at the end of the game. You know who your primary scorer is going to be at the end of the shot clock. You understand these roles. And as the roles codify, right, coaches feel really good about those roles in their best versions of themselves. The problem is when we go back and we start recruiting to gather intel, we're starting with names, right? Johnny and Joseph, and if you're a women's coach, you're starting with Courtney and somebody else, right? And you're talking to them and you're saying, okay, this person in their conversation, could fit this role. So you're trying to project them into a role where hopefully, right, they fit that, let's call it January, or in y'all's case, March job description. And I believe in the conversation of those two, we end up marrying the person more than the job description. And if you look at people who really do a great job with team selection and team building, they are loyal to the job description. Sean Payton recently, when he went out and got Bo Nix, I think he was loyal to the job description. Needed somebody who could function like Drew Brees in his offense, right? And so he stayed loyal to his job description. So my mind would be really start with your curriculum and your job description and what that looks like, and then work back to who you may be recruiting to make sure that they fit those jobs. Because if they don't fit those jobs, you're going to be disappointed and they're going to be frustrated.
Oh, wow. Loyal to the job description. That's great for college coaches. That's great. I hope we're writing that down. 3 or 4 daily disciplines, Jack. You've experienced the utmost of success, 3 Super Bowl trophies, 3 or 4 daily disciplines that have led to your professional success.
Yeah, I think everybody on this call probably works out. I have found that working out without music, without any sort of distraction, just walking or running or lifting without anything is really good for me, just with no inputs. It allows my mind to unwind. I stretch at night. I do about 15 to 20 minutes of stretching. I'm kind of a long, lanky guy anyway, but I stretch before I go to bed every day. I read at least a chapter in the Bible every day. Now, sometimes it's more than that, depending on what time allows for. I try to get through chunks of scripture if I can at a time. And so working out every day, obviously, I think the other piece, and I know this is probably for coaches is a no-brainer, but I think that the way you eat really shows how serious you are about being your best. I think we sometimes in certain communities, specifically in the Christian community, after church, it's, fried chicken and whatever else. And I think that, I think as believers, we really got to challenge that. We really got to think about our routines from our diet, because we want to be our best. And it's one of the things that Tom Brady, taught me, probably second meeting I met with him. It was like, hey, let's get you going on this different plan to try to help you with your body, as you participate in practice. And at the time, I was a little bit overweight, and he said, hey, this is what you need to do. And so we started into a different diet and exercise routine. So I work out every morning. I read at least a chapter a day in scripture. I usually read another book too, usually some different type of subjects. I don't stick to just spiritual books. I read a whole lot of other things, stretch every night. And then I think the way I eat when I approach every meal, I think hopefully is a reflection of a daily discipline.
Yeah. Wow. I'm going to ask you a question. Coaches all over the country are asking me in my new role. How do you handle conflict? Give us a couple things on how you handle conflict within an organization, within a staff. What are some techniques to handle conflict?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I felt like coming into this call, I was just praying and thinking about something I could say that would help everybody. And I thought maybe this might actually be the best question that you had on all of the sheet, just because we're in this every day, right? Whether it's parents or it's, other coaches or whatever. I think the number one thing you can do when you engage in conflict, or when conflict comes your way, is number one, just one, is you got to identify the source of it, right? So if a guy, let's just say one of your staff members is going through a personal situation, and he gets chippy with you on the practice field, on the practice court, right? he's not chippy with you because, right, you didn't blow the whistle at the right time or whatever, you went a minute over at practice. He's chippy with you because of the personal situation. And I think as leaders, it's incumbent upon us not to mix those two up, right? When we begin to litigate him for, hey, listen, don't talk to me like that on the practice field, right? We've lost the opportunity to witness to him because we know the real issue is something different. So the number one, when you engage conflict, is identify the source of it, right? And then the second thing is, where do I want the interaction with the conflicted group to end? Like, where do I want it to end, right? Like, not who's right? Because there's sometimes, you're right, but you can be wrong, right? And you can be wrong and you can be right. So there's a lot of that becomes somewhat flipped. But if you identify what is the source of the problem, okay, what is the real source of the conflict? And then secondly, where do I want this to end up when we get to the very end of us discussing all this? Then I think it'll de-escalate things and put the focus on the right things and give you a chance to handle it a little better. And I have
Absolutely
done that well. I know everybody on this call probably has moments where you've thought about, things that you fouled a pitch off here or there that you could have handled better, and you learn from those.
Yes. Yes. Agreed. All right, Jack, what you're getting ready to talk about is really big for us right now in college coaching, team building. Our teams are changing yearly now. Our retention, I'm talking to coaches all over the country, and how do I handle conflict? Number two is, I got 8 or 9 new players. What are we learning about team building? What can you share about team building? Because now in college basketball, we're building a team from scratch each year because of the transfer portal and NIL. So take over, Jack. It's all yours. You got the screen, and this is going to be amazing. Coaches, get these notes, please. It's going to really, really help your programs. And Jack, teach us about team building.
Great. And Barclay, I'll tell you this before we get too far removed or down the line. If anybody's got to go this morning, I'll tell you, I'm going to send Nations of Coaches these notes, just these 2 slides that I have that'll hopefully encourage everybody so that you can get after it and do what hopefully you want to do, and maybe adapt it to your own program. Let me just say a quick prayer for us, and then we'll get started this morning with our clinic. God, we just thank you for the opportunity to share about belief and the things that create belief. We need your help to do that. So I just pray that you would encourage us during our time, that we would be able to communicate efficiently and effectively and encourage somebody somewhere to be the best version of themselves. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Team belief. I mean, Barclay kind of hit it there. I think it's one of the most challenging things in the current climate of sports. It's obviously one of the most challenging things in our country right now. How do we get people to believe, and how do we keep their belief for a period of time, both individually and collectively? I think that there's so much transition going on right now. There's so much misinformation going on right now. And I think that transition and misinformation attack belief. Transition and misinformation attack belief. And so as you look at your team and as you look at what you're trying to do, you understand that. We don't complain about it because that doesn't actually help us. We have to find something that equates to transition and misinformation in a positive sense. And we have to find a way to offset those and build a curriculum that will encourage people to hopefully become their best. Everybody wants a team that believes. Belief is at this intersection of all good teams. You cannot be great unless your team believes in each other, believes in the process they're going through, obviously believes in the coaching staff, the administration. Belief is a central point, a center focus of anything that's successful. And so in the end, all of us, whether we're trying to run a certain play or we're trying to run a drill or we're trying to win a game, we need belief. We need it. We have to have it. You cannot lead a program without having belief. And so I want to hit you with a couple things this morning that I think will be very simple, but also transferable to you. And the first one, I don't have a graphic for, but I think this is a kind of a baseline for the whole discussion this morning. When you go to create belief, okay, when you go to create belief, you have two currencies, right? Right now in college athletics, everybody talks about currency and how NIL and other things are a huge part of that. But the real currencies that you have, okay, are time and love. Time and love. Okay. So the two baseline currencies for your program are time and love. Okay. And I say that to say the way that you allocate your time and the way you allocate your love will set you up to reap dividends from those two. So if we're talking about currency, everybody has in their bank account, in their hearts and on their watches, right? They have time and they have love. And you are going to spend that time and show that love. And as you do that, there are going to be things that come back to you based on how you do that. So we can't go any further before I challenge you with the first thing. How do you spend your time? How do you allocate it? How do you vet it? How do you think about it? And how do you spend your love? Or how do you show your love? How do you invest your care for your staff, your players, your people that support the program? Those two things are the currencies, in my opinion, that set the table for team belief. You want your team to believe more? The first thing is you have to sit down and put on your sheet of paper or put on your board in your office how I'm spending my time and who I love and how I love them. That is the baseline method or the baseline currency for me as I go to build team belief. I have a lot of people who I talk to every single week that ask me why their team doesn't believe. And then when I look at what they spend time on, I say to them, hey, we haven't spent any time on the things that matter to them or the things that matter for them to be able to believe. And so since we hadn't spent any time on it, no matter what you're doing schematically, what you're doing maybe from a standpoint of basketball, you haven't enabled the heart to believe. How you spend your time, how you love is going to be the two currencies. Okay. Now, secondly, I made a graphic that I wanted to show everybody because I do think that there's a good way to explain this, to show this. And I wanted to pull this up to start this morning because I think this will help us as we go to kind of talk through this summary. Can everybody see that? Barclay, we good? Okay. So basically, when we're talking about belief, okay, I broke it into two kind of categories from a standpoint of action items. So if time and love are our currencies, now we got to ask ourselves, okay, what are we doing? What are we doing and what are we saying? Okay. So here was my thought initially. You need to, so you say you want to build something. Okay. That's everybody on the call. We want to build something. We want to build a great team. We want them to believe. Okay. You need to daily address team belief. Every day, you need to have something you do that addresses or communicates or at least brings up the idea of team belief. Okay. And then secondly, you need to annually enact a team building formula. Now, everybody has a different one. I'm going to share mine, but I think that everybody needs to have a team building formula that you have, that you go through over the course of a year and over the course of your program that you can rest in. Okay. So you need to daily address team belief and you need to annually enact the modern team building formula or your own team building formula. All right, let's start. Team belief, in my opinion, starts with the idea of telling everybody the truth. That first bullet point under daily belief is that fragility of belief is real all around our country and also in our teams because truth is scarce. You cannot ask your team to be tough, smart, and dependable if you have not told them the truth. Now, there's a lot of obviously nuances to recruiting and challenges with onboarding and equipping and inspiring people when you're getting them there and you're getting them on your staff or you're getting them in your program. But you have to be loyal to telling them the truth. When you don't tell them the truth, you make them fragile. When you don't tell them the truth, you make them fragile. Fragile people do not believe well. They don't compete well under pressure. So understand, it starts with telling them the truth. Okay. The second thing is for you to understand that belief, all right, or team belief controls the willingness to sacrifice, all right, because belief enacts love. Now let's break that down a little bit. When you look at your uh, conditioning matrix, or you look at anything that requires sacrifice, okay, it's very easy to say, well, just do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. But the reality is your ability to attach team belief with the willingness to sacrifice, okay, when you communicate things, that is going to make sure that you bring love out, or that you sow love and then you ultimately bring it back out, rather than just expecting things from them. Okay. So for example, when you say, hey, we're going to do this exercise, whether it's running or it's lifting or whatever, all right, the ability for you to attach that to some principle that also enacts the team, what's better for the team, is going to consistently communicate how often it is. So for example, you show a play, and when you show that play, you're going to be able to say, hey, look at this guy in the post. He's physical, he's banging, 3 bangs, hard dribble, turn, jump, hook. He finished. Great. This is because he was in the weight room, right? Or whatever. So if you can attach the belief metric, right, to the willingness to sacrifice, daily addressing team belief allows for you to increase the willingness to sacrifice, right? The third one, the depth of your sacrifice, meaning now your work together, how much you're willing to put on the line, right? It impacts production. Now, this is very interesting, because when I got to the Patriots, one of the things that was really interesting to me was in the off-season program, everything was early in the morning, really early. Got there 4:45, 5. We started working somewhere around 5:45, 6. And then boom, we were out of there by 11:30. And it was like, man, why are we here so early? Well, we were here early because that was a part of the idea that we were deepening our sacrifice. We were deepening our sacrifice. So when you talk to a player or a coach and he doesn't believe, there's also a good chance that he doesn't have the level of sacrifice, or doesn't understand the level of sacrifice that he needs or she needs in order to be successful. So I would say if you're daily addressing team belief, we're daily addressing them as if we're not fragile. We're telling them the truth. We're daily addressing the fact that this sacrifice and you being willing to sacrifice is going to take our team forward, and what that means. We're daily addressing the idea that your sacrifice is going to help us be productive, or more productive. And you can show them schedules. You can show them things to say, hey, this is how our schedule in the fall or in the summer is going to correlate with our schedule during the season. So this is why this matters today and is going to help us later. So the depth of sacrifice is going to impact production, right? And for us to be able to run for 2 hours, we're going to have no problem running for 60 minutes or however long our game is, right? All right, this next one's a little more challenging. When you go to say that production impacts connectivity, I think this is something where a lot of older school coaches tend to say things like, hey, the best players play, or, hey, listen, you're going to play based on what you do. I think all that is true, but I think what we need to understand is every single person on our bench or in our locker room is producing some semblance of work, whether it's a practice player, right? Or whether it's a scout, a coach who's doing a scout. Their level of production, okay, and how good they get at their job is going to influence connectivity, how much people believe in that team or in that person. So if the scout guy who's supposed to be giving you your offensive looks shows up every day, does exactly what he's supposed to do, and is kicking butt and taking names, and you show that, hey, look at how hard this guy's working. Or you give credit to every piece of the team that is producing, it's going to make the team more connected. It's going to make the team more connected. So I just tell you, things that don't produce, right? We spend a lot of our time as leaders. People think, well, I'm going to talk all about things that don't produce. Well, yeah, that's good. But you've got to spend a lot of time talking about things that do produce, so that the people around you can see what they should believe in and how they should act, because right now belief is the fractured element of most teams. And then lastly, so once you've shown productive elements of the team and you've shown them what it looks like to be connected to production, right? Then you want to understand what it means to belong, right? And what does it mean to become in the group? And so I would say this is one of the things that I really believed that Coach Belichick did really well. I remember in 2014, we lost to the Kansas City Chiefs at Kansas City on Monday Night Football, and we came back, and that was the famous on to Cincinnati game. And we came into staff meeting, and everybody was debating, what's he going to say? What's he going to say? What's he going to say? And he handed out to all of us basically the notes from when he had interviewed us and how long we had been with the program, basically saying we're not going to flinch, that everybody here has a role and you're here for this role and you have done this role really well. And then he went into the team, and when he went into the team, instead of saying, hey, listen, we got to fix all this stuff and bop, 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 he said, listen, this is what we've been through as a team. And as best I can tell, it's not good that we keep focusing on, Kansas City. So we're on to Cincinnati. And so he flipped the page in that case, because the idea of us becoming something better, the idea of us being together and belonging with each other was more important than the results of the last game. And so I say that to say to you, you can find your own ways, but you need to daily address team belief. Daily address team belief. All right. And I'll summarize the team belief. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Tell the truth to your players. Tell the truth to your staff. Don't hold back. Don't do a bunch of padded, walls in your room. Just tell the truth. You have to have couth and have to have professionalism, but you have to tell the truth, right? Show the willingness to sacrifice. Celebrate that. Everybody uses military examples. I think those are great, but I also think internal people around your program, whether it be people who serve and do equipment or serve food, show the willingness to sacrifice. Show how people are productive. Show how people are productive. Celebrate production so that people see what they need to do, right? Show how the team belief was improved, right, when people did produce, and how that connectivity, and show the bench celebrating and those like that. I'm sure most of you do that. And then if it gets hard and you have to have a moment where you're reflecting, right, show how the connectivity of everybody in the group is dependent on each other and that we need each other to be successful, because I think that's probably the most important thing that people don't teach. We don't need one player. We need everybody in order to be successful. So next is the annual event. I'm sure most everybody here has a curriculum that they go through on an annual basis with their teams. If you daily address team belief, then annually, what you should be addressing is you should have your own curriculum, your own year-long process that allows for you to see where you are in your own process. Are we a little up ahead? Are we a little behind? So that you can adjust what's going on. So for me, this is the one that I used. Right? First of all, it was high character and qualified personnel. It was people in the building based on IQ, EQ, and CQ. That's intellectual quotient, emotional intelligence or emotional quotient, and that's curiosity quotient. Being curious learners, I think, is an essential part of all of the people that work for you or work with you. I think that's very important. So you need to have those people in your building. If you don't have those people, highest EQ is possible, highest IQ is possible, highest CQ is possible. You want those people in your building. Next is you need to have a great curriculum where you are preparing them for the things they're going to go through next, right? Not just trying to put a play in. Every practice needs to be preparing them for something they're going to go through in the future. And you need to articulate why you're doing what you're doing every day, right? And explain, hey, today we're doing this because this is what matters for this, and be able to give them specifics on the why that attaches to the year-round curriculum to make them the best version of themselves. And that includes obviously non-basketball things, right? Team building events, right? Dinners, things where your curriculum is addressing belief. Then I think you need to have a team belief, some sort of chart. I used to have a belonging chart. Some people have a belief chart. You need to have a belief chart that you keep as a head coach or as a leader, where you're looking at it going, okay, we've got 10 that believe and we've got 3 that don't. We've got 7 that believe, all right, and we've got 10 that don't. Because as you look at that belief chart year round, you're going to be able to see, okay, here's where we are. And no matter what you do as a coach, that chart, the amount of people that are really in with you, is going to affect the efficiency and effectiveness of your team. So you need to have some sort of team belief, metric that you're measuring or establishing. You can do it all in, doing enough, not in. That's good, like 1, 2, 3. Or you can just do it as, in or out, either 1, 1, 2. I wouldn't recommend doing more than 1, 2 or 1, 2, 3, because then it gets complex on your metrics. But I would say those are, and then lastly, you need to look at, and we talked about this in the opening, about your time. So we need to talk about how we spend our time on a global sense from a standpoint of the annual evaluation. So if you ask yourself, why does my team not believe? I would say back to you, or if you ask me, why does my team not believe? I would say back to you, who's your personnel? What's your curriculum? How are you measuring belief? And what are you spending your time on? That would be what I would say back to you. And when you answer those questions well, I think that it blesses you from a standpoint of leadership to try to get team belief. So let me review, and then I'll do our last graphic. The 2 most important currencies is what you spend your time on and how you spend your love. If you want to build anything, you need to daily address team belief. You need to annually build a formula or address your formula that has to do with team success and team belief. Let me reshare this last one, and then we'll be done.
Perfect, Jack. It's up.
All right. So this last one is done, and I apologize, it's done on the NFL schedule, but I did want to give you this because I thought this was a more practical example of what team belief really looks like. So when you go to create belief, you're not going to do that off the bat. We all know that there's, certain times a year where, you're not playing, and then other times you are playing, and then whatever happens with belief process, right? So I would just say to you, you need to have expectations with your team. I used to go over this with our staff, our support staff, and our coaches before every season. And what I did was I explained to them how throughout the year, our goal was to increase belief over time. It wouldn't happen right away, but our goal was by the time that it mattered the most in the playoffs, we would believe the most. By the time that it mattered the most, we would believe the most. Okay. So if I can be honest with you, this has been done with the mindset of the NFL, but it is transferable to everything that you're doing where you are. And I would say most importantly, the different stages are very transferable. So let's go through this real quick, and then we'll wrap up. Each stage is built with the idea of the collective consensus of the group. What would they be saying? Or if you interviewed, you put truth serum in your entire team, what would they be saying back to you, right? So you get new players in. We used to get them in right after free agency in March and April. So you get new players in, or you have a draft and you're bringing in new players. For you guys, you've recruited and they've showed up for summer school, or the first part of summer school. There's a new and awkward stage, right? Everybody's like, who is this person? Who is this person? What do they do? This person's trying to take my minutes. It's trying to take my role, all of that stuff, right? We understand what that is, right? And there's a certain amount of time you can't rush. That is going to happen, right? Then an ego adversity event happens. Somebody says something to somebody at a summer workout, or somebody's complaining, right? And then you have a chance to insert what I just talked about, some sort of team belief mechanism, some sort of, hey, let me show you some tape. Let me show you something that happened 2 years ago, and how these two guards played well together. And so you guys don't need to be competing against each other, because these two guards can play well together and have success, whatever the example is. Then you go to the casual and hopeful stage. So for us, this was always kind of, everybody's going to win the Super Bowl when they go to training camp, right? When you see the headlines, every training camp, that doesn't matter what organization it is, it's, kind of casual. Nobody's a threat to anybody. And now we're just practicing, we're doing our thing. And this may be for you guys, maybe in the early fall where you're practicing and everybody's, hey, we're going to have a great year. We're good. And then maybe you go through an injury, right? Or somebody's out for a week or so, or somebody, hey, I don't know if, I can do this. Somebody hits a wall, right? And then there's your ego adversity event, right? Then as you get more time logged together, you get to this common ground and time logged stage. Now, for us, that was at the end of camp, the beginning of the, preseason and or into the maybe first couple games of the season. For you guys, this might be like when your holiday tournaments are going on, maybe, or for example, in Thanksgiving, early December, where you've got enough time, right? But you haven't done a whole lot together, but you've done just enough time, right? After the time log stage is very interesting, and you need to be very specific of when you think this is, because that's when the most amount of fracture can happen in a team. The most amount of fracture can happen after stage 3. Why? Because ego inserts itself. There's usually some adversity event. Somebody's mom's sick. Somebody's family's going through something. And then the roles begin to declare. Now, roles change throughout the year. Everybody on this call knows that. But the idea is the first iteration of your roles is always a drama-filled event. Who's starting? Who's not starting? Who's playing what role? How do we see it? And as that begins to come out of the coaches and into the players, there's usually a fracture there, right? So that is one you need to have a plan for. Have a day off, have a communication, try to get to your players to make sure that you go over this and communicate this to help them see the best version of themselves is coming if they'll just keep fighting with you. Then you had the shared adversity and intense lessons. This is that first loss on the road. This is that first tough game where you didn't play your best. You got your butt kicked, and now you're licking your wounds. You come back in the meeting room, and how does everybody feel? Well, somebody thinks that it's this, and somebody thinks that it's this. So being able to address that and communicate that in that next stage. Then you usually bounce back. Every team has a moment where they upset somebody or they, do something great. And now it's like, hey, we're here. We got talent. We got, some of our systems are working. We're here. Let's do it. And so we fight back, and there's a spike up, and there seems to be an opportunity for some success. And then you can say, hey, guys, see, when we do it this way, it can work, right? And then it begins to be the battle of how full of themselves they are, right? And maybe somebody thinks they won the game for the team, or some coach thinks his scout was so good that that's the reason we won. And you have to come with humility and say, hey, guys, we did a lot to get here. There's a lot more we have to do in order to be successful. We're going to double down on our systems. We're going to have a repeat system success, and we're going to unify the team. We're going to talk about, all the stuff we've been through to get here, and, blah, blah, blah. You do your thing. And then lastly, I think, and again, this is where it's very difficult to get here, is you have a complete system success and championship mentality. That means across the board, everybody's in their role. Everybody understands what they're doing. And most of the group, at least, is functioning in their role at a high capacity level, right? And so again, as we go through this, I would just say, you're going to go through this phases as fast or as quick as you think. You're going to go through it maybe slower than you think. But in the end, I think tracking where you are and understanding and trying to get through these phases as quickly as possible, I think really helps you. And the last thing I'd say is, the goal is the best for this year's team. That's the goal, right? The goal is not to be some other year's team or to be whatever. The goal is to believe the best that this year's team can, because when it does, I think that helps you to know you've accomplished whatever that is on the floor. It could be a good record. It could be an okay record. It depends on the group. But the idea is you want to say, hey, we did the best we could do with this year's team. So just summarizing, I think that it's pretty hard in today's culture to say, hey, listen, everybody who walks in our building is going to believe the same. Everybody's got things they've been through and traumas and challenges and all that stuff. But I'll say, if you're intentional on team belief, spend your currency, time and love, spend your currency wisely, intentionally interact with team belief, have a formula that you go through, and be aware of what phase you are in along the pendulum of team belief and that team belief process. Then you can give yourself hopefully some good things to help you believe and navigate one by one as you try to go it. So Barclay, I hope that helped everybody. I'm glad to send those. And again, these are just my rough notes, learned through a lot of skin knees and some frustrations along the way and a few things that went right. So hoping that helps everybody, and just again, thankful for the opportunity to share, and thankful for this ministry and what you guys do.
Oh, Jack, 36 years of coaching. If I could do it again, I would flip 60% of the time on this instead of 60% of the time on X and O's. And just to recap, I mean, I wish we could do a whole nother talk on just belonging and how that affects the team. The greatest thing our players want now is to belong.
Yes.
To talk about things that produce, to tell the truth. Curiosity, Jack, you mentioned that. That's unbelievable to think about creating curiosity. And by the time it matters the most, we need to believe the most. Shared adversity and best version of ourselves. Our goal as coaches is to bring the very best version of our team. And Jack, I thank you. I mean, this has been amazing. Thank you for investing in us this morning and for making us better coaches. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for this ministry and all that God's doing through Nations of Coaches and you, and continue to double down on the right things. This is fun stuff to see people rallying for the right things, and
Absolutely.
I think
Absolutely.
it would be remiss, real quick, Mark, if I just say that, Florida, obviously people, Florida, I don't know if we have anybody in this Zoom on, that's impacted by that, but I know that this ministry is praying for you and praying for those who are impacted today. I meant to say that in my opening, and
Yes,
just thinking of everybody today as they go through the hurricane.
absolutely. Thank you, Jack. That was the next thing on my list, that to remind our viewers to pray for Florida and the impact of the hurricane. Stick with us. I'm super excited to introduce Mike Lightfoot. Mike Lightfoot is a coaching legend. He's in the Indiana Hall of Fame, and he's our regional director in Indiana. And I just love this guy. He's going to share with us our Nations of Coaches character moment. Coach Lightfoot.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good morning.
It's great to be with you guys today. I couldn't write fast enough with the information that we just got from Jack. I thought that was absolutely amazing. And as I think about all the things he shared, I'm reminded really, if we look at Ephesians and talk about the body, everybody working together to make sure that we reach our goals. I think what Jack was saying was so true. It's in a world we live in today, I think we have to strive to be our best, not always the best. And if we can strive to be our best, that's what God wants us to do, to be our best every day. And, have those beliefs. I got two quick stories. I played for a guy named Homer Drew. I thought I knew a lot after I got done playing for him. And I started coaching in Indiana high school, and I was the youngest coach in Indiana. After my first year, I found out I knew nothing. I was just shocked at what I didn't know. And so I went to my very first clinic, just like what we've been doing here, and trying to learn about the game. I can remember that day just like it was yesterday, sitting in a great big gym, a hallway where I was because there's no seats available. Hubie Brown was speaking, and I was out in the hallway leaning against the wall with a notepad, and I started noticing people started taking notes on everything Hubie Brown said. Eventually, I leaned to my right and just noticed who was sitting beside me is Johnny Wooden. Johnny Wooden, Purdue person, Indiana guy, won 10 national championships. My idol, sitting right beside me. Well, that was an experience. But what I noticed right away was Johnny Wooden was writing down everything that Hubie Brown said. So it was like my history class back in high school. I started copying everything Johnny Wooden wrote down. Now, I tell that story because that story impacted me as a coach maybe more than anything else that I experienced in my coaching career. Because Johnny Wooden in 1979 at that clinic was retired. He was no longer coaching, but he was still learning. I think that great coaches, great people of faith are constantly being lifelong learners. And so I think that that's a key for us all is what are we doing today to be a lifelong learner? That we can help our families, we can help our wives, we can help our husbands, we can help our teams by being a lifelong learner. Because Johnny Wooden's planted that seed in me. So every day I wanted to learn more and gain more. The second nugget, I think, goes along with what Jack's talking about. You know, the wider the base, the higher the pyramid. And that was my motto to my team. If we could get everybody on the same page, I think we'll be successful. And coaches, I want to challenge you with something really serious right now, because your players have just figured out who's not going to be playing a whole lot or who's in rotation and who's not. So right now, I challenge you to invest in those young men more than your high-profile players. Invest in that 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12th man, because those guys are going to be key to your success. The wider that base, the higher the pyramid. So you got to make them feel very, very important, because as the season grinds and they don't have any playing time, their practice time is their game time. And you got to sell that to your players, and they got to believe that. If they don't, they'll start dwindling off. They don't give their best in practice every day. That doesn't give your starters the best look. The wider the base, the higher the pyramid. And let me close with just a few suggestions. One of the greatest things what we did, we installed in our program a bench captain. That captain had all the rights and privileges of every captain, but he just simply didn't play very much. But what he did was he policed our bench, making sure that our bench was active, informed. We made our prep guys who practice the other team's plays, they get shirts that say, "We know your stuff better than you do." They felt part of that pyramid base, and they felt like they were connected. And every day, then they would go out and work as hard as they possibly can. So again, the whole body, as Ephesians 4 talks about, we need everybody on the same page to make sure that we're going to be successful. And so I just pray that each one of us looks for that opportunity to be a lifelong learner and make sure you have a wide base.
Thank you, Coach. If I was a coach, I would want to meet and get to know Coach Lightfoot. If I was still in coaching, he's at mlightfoot@nationsofcoaches.com. He will reach back. His knowledge about the game and about coaching the right way is extensive. And I just encourage you to reach out to him and get to know him. He's amazing. If you want to reach Jack, his email is going to be on the screen. Coaches, if you want to talk to him more, email him, reach out to him. He is a willing teacher. He is beyond amazing. If you have questions about Nations of Coaches, please reach out to me. And here's my email. Next week, we have Joni Taylor, Olympic gold medalist and the head coach from Texas A&M. I can't wait to visit with her and to learn Texas A&M defense. I want to mention to you, going on right now for coaches' wives across the country, we want to invite you, coaches, to invite your wives to our Nations of Coaches Wives Bible study. They're studying the book of 1 Peter. And currently we have 160 coaches' wives from across the country, from the East Coast to the West Coast, participating in our Bible studies. And coaches, help with the length of the season by introducing your wives to our Nations of Coaches Wives Bible study. You'll be very glad that you did, and she will benefit immensely. thank you for being with us today. I learned so much. Every time I'm around Jack, I learn so much. Please contact us at Natures of Coaches if you have any questions or if we can help to serve you in any way. Our goal is to serve coaches, and we value you and appreciate you. Thank you, and we will see you next week as we get to learn from Joni Taylor, Texas A&M head women's basketball coach. Have a great week.